Good evening, I'm Archie Fisher, and welcome to part one of Leader's Tapes. Over the 4 parts in this series, I'll be examining Bill Leader's pioneering involvement from the early days of folk recording right up to the present day, where new hi-fi expectations are set by the digital purity of the compact disc. These new snatches of musical time are usually recorded in studios laden with enhancing devices and reproduced on our state-of-the-art stereos. But the domestic equipment that we now take for granted would have outstripped in quality the most modern recording studios of 40 years ago. The only thing that has been constant over the years is the ear of the sound engineer cum producer. And back in the 50s, there were no major recording companies listening to the folk musician. Committing the tradition and emerging revival to relative posterity was left to a few dedicated individuals with access to simple equipment. Bill Leader was one of them.
It was my mother's old wind-up HMV gramophone, I think, that got me going. From about the age of 5, I suppose, I used to be playing these records, and then when I'd got through all the stuff that we had, I started managing to borrow stuff from friends, and I got a very wide selection of stuff. I mean, I think I heard my first Swiss yodeling choir on the back of an old Regal record when I was very young. Stuff like that, you know. It wasn't the general run of what Billy Cotton or the Henry Hall and his BBC Dance Orchestra were playing. And this was the time when I was getting very enthusiastic about records. And I remember the first one I bought. It was Arthur Askey singing "Oh My, She Was Very, Very Shy." I thought it was wonderful. I spent my own money on getting that.
Once I loved Matilda, she was very tall. I had to climb a ladder to get near her face at all. I went with Matilda, strolling on the moor. Matilda said she'd never been so near a man before. Oh my, she was very, very shy. She was very shy, and so was I. She whispered, "If you kiss me, sir, I'm sure that I shall die." Oh my, she was very, very shy. Oh my, she was very, very shy. She was very shy, and so was I. I felt her little hand, and ooh, her temperature was high. Oh my, she was very, very shy.
When I left school, I'd wanted to... I had this sort of dream of working in sound. I could sort of see myself sitting in a control room somewhere, in a film studio, I think it was. Most kids at that time, of course, wanted to be train drivers. I wanted to be a recording engineer. Again, this is mid-40s. It wasn't the general thing, I don't think, then. But I said that's what I wanted to do when I left school.
Bill Leader's preference for the tape deck to the footplate was not to be fulfilled until the mid-50s. He moved from Yorkshire to London and fell in with a group of kindred spirits. Tape recording was in its infancy, and as a more flexible medium than the earlier straight-to-acetate disc technique, tape began to liberate the whole spectrum of recording. Bill's work with a legendary audio character called Dick Swettenham and the Workers' Music Association was to lead him to the door of Topic Records, which is currently run by Tony Engel.
We claim to be the oldest independent label in the world, and we can actually date the label's birth to 1939, and it was part of the cultural wing of the Workers' Music Association, and as such released a catalogue which got just about over 100 78s from 39 to the early 50s. When I started to know about Topic, then the key players were Jerry Sharp, who was the managing director, Bill Leader, of course, who did much of the recording and the production, and Alan Bush, who put some of the money in, and Alan was one of England's few communist composers, and you can see there was always a left-wing bias in those days.
The first session I was involved in, there was this fella hit town, this cowboy, and his name was Rambling Jack Elliott, and he'd arrived in town. He agreed to make a record of Woody Guthrie songs for Topic. It was going to be, I think, pretty well amongst their first long-playing records to be released. The problem was that we didn't have a tape recorder to record it on at that time. We hadn't managed to afford to buy a tape recorder. There weren't that many out to be bought. I mean, we couldn't afford the big stuff that EMI and Decca used. Mainly they designed and built them themselves anyway. It was not an off-the-shelf culture in those days. You didn't walk in and buy a tape machine, just as easy as that. There weren't that many around. What were around were expensive, so we didn't have one. But Ewan McCall offered to do the recording for us. He got a high-quality portable tape recorder that actually was one, I think, of 13 that had been made by Ferrograph to record the coronation for the BBC, and he'd managed to get hold of one of these. It was a special modification. It worked very well. And so Jack Elliott and I went down to Ewan's place in West Croydon, it was then, and I sat in, really.
I've been hitting some hard traveling, I thought you know. I've been hitting some hard traveling way down the road. I've been hitting some hard traveling, hard rambling, hard gambling. I've been hitting some hard traveling, Lord.
Later on, I did more with Jack Elliott and Darrell Adams, who was his sort of singing partner at that time. And we had lots of sessions, including one monumental one, actually on a yacht of cows in the Isle of Wight, because he didn't actually have a work permit. We decided that we would record it. We decided we would put ourselves into a situation where we claimed that we could have recorded it outside of territorial waters, which those days was a modest 3 miles. Actually, we weren't that far out. We were about we were tied up to the quay. Let's not mess about. And we dangled the Reslow ribbon down through the hatch, and he just sang for, I think it was a couple of days more or less. Apparently, I think we did have a little bit of sleep in between. And he just recorded and recorded and recorded, and there was just some wonderful material came out of that.
I was standing down in New York town one day, standing down in New York town one day, standing down in New York town one day, singing hey, 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 hey. I was broke, I didn't have a dime. I was broke, I did not have a dime. I was broke, I did not have a dime. Hey, 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 hey. Every good man gets a little hard luck sometimes. Every good man gets a little hard luck sometimes. Every good man gets a little hard luck sometime. Play it out, man. Sing it, hey, 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 hey. I'm gonna ride the new morning railroad. I'm gonna ride the new morning train. I'm gonna ride the new morning train. Singing, hey, 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 hey.
There was a wonderful young American folk singer passing through called Peggy Seeger. She ended up actually staying at Alan Lomax's flat. Alan Lomax at that time was in this country, living and working in this country. And we recorded Peggy at Alan Lomax's flat. So the record that we released with Peggy Seeger was done just in a room. She was sitting there, the microphone was there, the tape machine was there. And that's a very good way of getting a nice sympathetic performance, I think.
Me and my man's pap, we all live down Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap. Oh, all on down Cumberland Gap. Lay down, boys, take a little nap, we'll all raise hell in Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap. Oh, all on down Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap's a loaded place, 3 kinds of water to wash your face. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap. Oh, all on down Cumberland Gap. take a little nap for 3 miles. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap. Oh, on down Cumberland Gap. Now I'm back, you don't care, leave my little jug sitting right here. If it ain't here, when I get back, I'll raise hell. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap. Oh, going down Cumberland Gap.
I'm Archie Fisher, and you're listening to Leader's Tapes on Radio 2. If Bill Leader and Topic Records were tying the knots, the strands of music they brought together were as varied as the new skiffle craze which emerged out of the trad jazz boom, the rural folk song, and the unlikely bedfellow of the choral tradition. At the core of the political folk revival in Scotland were the late Norman Buchan and his wife Janie.
Of course, obviously, I knew Bill on the left. And in Glasgow, we had the famous YCL choir. And in a funny way, looking back, that it was a tradition that I came from. As any singing that I did, I got at school, but I also got in the co-op choirs. And that was a very, very big and a very considerable quality. The YCL choir sang the Red Flag to its proper tune of the White Cockade. You know, the people's flag is deepest red, and it's great. And it's a great shame that we ever stuck with the Tannenbaum, because it makes it dirge-like, whereas to the White Cockade, it's tat and off we go, and it's got spirit and lift about it.
The people's flag is deepest red, it's shouted off the mountain dead, and there their limbs will stiff and fall. The hearts will die its every bolt, and raise the scarlet standard high. Within its shade will live or die, no cowards flinch and traitors sneer, but keep the red flag flying near. It's waved up of our infant might, when all our heads in darkness night, it witnessed many a deed and wow. We must not change its colour now, and raise the scarlet standard high. Within its shade we'll live or die, no cowards flinch and traitors sneer, but keep the red flag flying near. The heads and cowards swear we all, to bear it onward till we fall, from dungeons dark or gallows grim, the soul shall be our parting ring. Then raise the scarlet standard high, within its shade we'll live or die, no cowards flinch and traitors sneer. We'll keep the red flag flying here.
A less familiar setting of the Red Flag to a tune with Jacobite connections, the White Cockade, recorded in Glasgow by Bill Leader. Bill did much of his early work with the London-based Irish, and some of his first recordings of this era were to set Reg Hall on the road to being an enthusiastic authority on the music.
Certainly by 1955 there was a Margaret Barry 78 which I bought, and a Patrick Galvin 78 which I bought, which I still have. And then round about that time they advertised, I think, 9-inch LPs, one of Michael Gorman and one of Margaret Barry, which never were issued. So they advertised them and I put my name down for them, and they never came out. And I think they had a change of heart, and Bill was doing the recording, which I found out subsequently. And Michael Gorman and Margaret Barry actually got together as a partnership, so I think that changed the prospect of what they should do.
As I went out walking one morning in June, to view the fine spots and the meadows in bloom, I spied a young damsel. She appeared like a queen in her costly fine robes and her mantle so green. Oh, I stood in amaze, I was caught by surprise. diamonds. Archie's light ruins. She is one of the fairies that nature composed. She's a pretty fair maid. Will you come with me? We'll join in wedlock and married we'll be. I'll dress you in rich vesture. You'll appear like a queen in the costly fine robes and tormented so green.
The distinctive voice of Margaret Barry with her mantle so green from her album with fiddler Michael Gorman. Collaborations were the order of the day, and Bill Leader recalls one of the more monumental pairings.
I remember a great session that was between Ewan McCall and Dominic Bean, in which they were swapping songs, childhood songs, and it was loosely scripted by Ewan, but you can't keep Dominic, or you couldn't keep Dominic down once he got going. So it was a swapping of sort of Scottish kids songs and Irish kids songs and things like that. But it had a wonderful pace to it, I think, and a wonderful feel to it. I don't know if that record's still around. It originally came out on Folkways, but Topic did release it.
Hey, Bobby, can you run, run, run? You're old and baz and done, done, done. You are disgrace, grace, grace. Run, Bobby, give us all a chase.
On the croft, where we played pitch and toss, and the copper come and chased us away. So we hit him on the head with a bloody big lump of lead, and the sly little beggar run away. And of course, no slum would be complete without its prison. That super tenement with bars across the window is a constant reminder that there's somebody worse off than you. In Glasgow, the prison is called Budlinny. The porridge is made, you don't need a spade, you just need to hold out your tinny. If you break the law, you're welcome to call at the big mansion who's called Budlinny, ha ha.
In Dublin, it's Mountjoy. There's a fine name for a nick. Some official poet must have thought that one up. In Dublin's big town there are first-class hotels where they give a board and lodgings to all the big swells. Blinds on the windows and bells on the doors, and beautiful carpets laid down on the floors. It's in such a spot that you get a great view of the Royal Canal and the ships that pass through. I was there once myself, so I'm able to tell that there's no digs in Dublin like Mountjoy Hotel.
Up and down the country, folk roadists were coming out of their academic cloisters and playing an important part in the revival by introducing traditional singers and songs to the growing folk club scene. Hamish Henderson, Peter Kennedy, Paul Carter and the American Alan Lomax were all key players, and none more so than the Topic Records artistic director, Bert Lloyd.
There were early stereo sessions. We were still juggling with the technique of the whole thing. The album of industrial songs and the album of sea shanties that were done with various of the young revival singers, headed up by Bert, and Bert Lloyd is, well, he was really the producer there. I was merely the technical man who got it done on tape. He was the person who decided what should be done, what the material was, what the repertoire was, and really who should do it. So he's really, I suppose, should be credited with the producer there. I was being the recording engineer. They were fun. They were all done in a rather large flat in Hampstead, which had rather nice acoustic.
While the approach to recording in these days would be regarded as rather homespun now, there were several concepts on the go that would utilise the emerging talents of the folk club scene. One of the strongest regions in the early English folk song revival was the North East, which produced performers like Bob Davenport and Louis Killen, who still hold Bill Leader in high regard.
Basically, Bill has been a thread through that early life. I mean, I can't think of the revival as far as getting out records without thinking of Bill Leader, because he was the major person who was producing the records, or certainly doing the recording of records, and in some cases producing, but mostly he was the engineer who set up, because one of his own commitment to the music, and it was just like he's been involved in that all his life.
Bill was sort of always there, and he was recording those particular things like the LPs of on the Iron Muse and Where We Were All Together. And then they seemed to come out of the Centre 42 around about the 1962 time there, 63. And there was a lot of projects.
One morning when I went to walk, the sight was most exciting. I heard the noise and looked around, and who do you think was fighting? I stood amazed and at them gazed to see them in such rages, for I never seen a row like that between the Brockwell cages. The patent to our cages, although I be a stranger, I can walk me walk as well as ye, and free the men for danger. Now if the rope should break with me at skinny jars, just watch us, you'll see me clag onto the skis, for us full of springs and catches. When ganning up and down the shaft, the patent cage did threaten for to take Warradden's life if they stopped at meeting. Warrad cage balled out as it past you nasty dirty patent. Rub your eyes again the skeets, I think it's hardly wakened. Come out the gates, because it's my intention to let ye see whether ye or me is the best invention. The new bean raised took off his clays, then at it they went dabbing. The blood was running down the skates and past the wayman's cabin. The brakesman brought them both to bank, the mischief for to settle. They bid frae 5 o'clock to 6, and the patent won the battle. It took the brakeman half a shift to clag them up with plasters. Warrad cage sent his notice in, just to vex the masters.
Bob Davenport's row between the cages from the Iron Muse LP, which in 1963 was a landmark recording as it involved urban revivalist singers and musicians from all across Britain. It was a concept album on industrial song, but at the same time, the traditional singers in the rural areas were appearing on disc, including Sheila Stewart of the renowned Stewarts of Blair.
Oh, the last time the best was handsome, young and fair. We had I spent some merry nights upon the banks so well. We had I spent some merry nights while on we Barney Rouse, while the echo mocks the corn creek among the honey knows. We loved each other dearly, and disputes we seldom had, as constant as the pendulum, her heartbeat always glad. We fought for joy and found it while yon we Barney Rouse, while the echo mocks the corn creek among the honey knows. Ye maidens fair and pleasure dames, drive to the banks of Doon. you'll dearly pay. For every sanity the barber's for perfume, but a rural joy is free to off where the scented clover grows, or the echo mocks the corncrake among the honey knowes.
Sheila Stewart with the Corncrake Among the Whinny Nows from the Stewarts of Blair album, now available on CD, along with a host of other Bill Leader originations that have stood the test of time. I'm Archie Fisher, and next week we'll hear about Bill's work with other landmark musicians, including the High Level Ranters, the Wattersons, Davy Graham, and the first new wave from Ireland, the Dubliners, who brought a homeland echo of the thriving London Irish music scene.
There's a long history of good Irish performers being recorded and issued in Ireland and America, but not a lot of contemporary contemporary at that time, 50s, performers being released in England for English consumption on long-playing record. And I think Michael Gorman's performance of Dr. Gilbert, the real, is still something that just takes your breath away.
Good evening, I'm Archie Fisher. Welcome to the second part of Leader's Tapes, the continuing story of Bill Leader's involvement in the pioneering days of folk music recording. Many of the early albums that are now reissued on CD were recorded in the same kind of room as you're sitting in now. Colin Ross of Newcastle's hardy perennials, the High Level Ranters, recalls the band's front room debut recording with Bill Leader.
I think our first record, Northumberland Forever, was recorded in Foster Charlton's house, with the trouble with the wind and the chimney. Because do you know what happened there? The wind blew. We had to stuff up the chimney because the wind was too loud. So the recording was interrupted occasionally. with that. But that was Bill. I mean, he's a very patient man, you know. He sat behind his, I think it was a Revox. He had a big old Revox recorder, you know. And he would set himself up in one room and wires leading all over the place, and we were in the front room. That was our first session with Bill, I think, with the Northumberland Forever record.
I was a young maid truly, and I lived in Sargate Street. I thought to marry a canny lad to be with me at night. Some good like body, some canny body to be with me at noon. But I have married a keen lad, and my good days are done. He's an ugly body, a bubbly body, an ill-faced, hideous loon. And I have married a keen lad, and my good days are done. Now I thought to marry a parson to make us say me prayers, but I have married a keel lad and he kicks us down the stairs. I thought to marry a dyer to dye me April blue, but I have married a keel lad and he makes us sailing round. He's an ugly body, a bubbly body, an ill-faced, hideous loon, and I have married a keel lad and my good days are done.
It was difficult to try and get any sort of comment from him, you know, are we doing all right, is that okay? Oh, well, that's all right, you know, it's laid back, and I suppose at the time it was a bit infuriating in a way, because we thought, well, maybe you could say, well, it was really quite bad that, or that was really good, can you do it again like that? But no, you would just take it. He just took what we had to give him. So in that case he was ideal, because you see, if he sort of said, oh, that's really great, we might have tended to sort of go with what he wanted. And that might have been exactly what we wanted. There was no fuss and bother about it.
I think a producer needs to have an ear for sound. He needs to be able to hear what is really going on. And most musicians can't do that, you know. Most musicians just fill in everything with because they're so well informed and so imaginative anyway about music in general. They only need to have something hinted at in a sound record, and they will fill it all in and think that it happened. So I think I had that. Don't know where I got it from, but I had that. So I think I was able to hear things, and able to, I think, liaise with people in that sort of fairly tense situation of working in a studio. And I suppose that, to some extent, started developing a style. The other thing that developed a style was the fact that we had no money. So we had to do everything we did on a shoestring and one tape recorder, and in the days of mono, one microphone. We didn't use mixers or anything fancy like that. We plugged the microphone into the back of the tape machine and went off and put the microphone in the best possible place we could to capture the music that was going on, and that was it. It was all field recording in a way.
And field recording was to become an important part of Bill Leader's work. While new reputations were being made among the revivalist singers in the big cities, the ranks of the folk club audiences across the land were expanding, and the new awareness of a song heritage brought a demand for authentic recordings of source singers. There was a certain urgency to draw on this wellspring of the tradition before it ran dry, not just for the archives, but to preserve the quality of performance the singers brought to the songs. Tom Willett was one of those early voices of England.
My dog and me went out last night for to view this invitation of jumps the air, and away she run till she run into my plantation. She hollered and she squealed and she made a noise, but something stopped her hollering. Lie still, you pretty little puss, for your uncle's just a-comin'. I'll go on till
some public house, and there I will get merrily. I will spend this crown and another one down. Ain't I a hearty good fellow?
While gamekeepers lie sleeping from one of the early sounding boards for the revival, the English ballad singer Tom Willett. While the folk club scene was gathering momentum, few of the touring musicians or residents had made it onto record. The transition for the Wattersons was a homely one.
Bill didn't have a studio as such. You recorded, you sang in the front bedroom, and Bill was through in the back bedroom, and the only communication he had with Bill was a red bulb. And it was an ordinary bulb painted red. And when it came on, you sang, and when it went off, you stopped. And no, he didn't interfere in any way. He wanted you as you were, and that's what he got. I mean, the only thing he ever taught us was recording techniques, of which we used very few. You know, right, lads, when the red bulb goes on.
It was three northern acts. It was Maureen Craig, who is sadly now dead, and Harry Boardman is also sadly now dead, and us. And
which the rumours are greatly exaggerated.
We're still here. And it was, what was it? Greenland whale fisheries and white cockade, 10. And King Arthur's Servants, I think, was it?
Right, that's the three we did. Yes.
In good King Arthur's days, he was a merry king. He threw 3 servants out of his house because they wouldn't sing. Because they wouldn't sing. Because they wouldn't sing. He threw 3 servants out of his house because they wouldn't sing. The first he was a miller, and the second he was a weaver, and the third he was a little tailor. 3 thieving rogues together, 3 thieving rogues together, 3 thieving rogues together, and the third he was a little tailor. 3 thieving rogues together. The miller he stole corn, and the weaver he stole yarn, and the little tailor he stole broadcloth for to keep these 3 rogues warm. For to keep these 3 rogues warm, for to keep these 3 rogues warm, and the little tailor he stole broadcloth for to keep these 3 rogues warm. The miller he drowned in his dam, and the weaver he hung on his yarn, and the devil put his foot on the little tailor with a broadcloth under his arm. With a broadcloth under his arm, with a broadcloth under his arm, and the devil put his foot on the little tailor with a broadcloth under his arm.
Collett's record shop in London had become one of the great meeting points of like minds, and as Bill Leader was to discover, unlike minds with what proved to be a providential encounter.
That's where I ran into a dynamic gentleman called Nathan Joseph, who was determined. He'd come out of Cambridge and he'd spent a year in America, and I think he was in love with show business to some extent, and he was determined that there was some gaps in the record market that he could fill and succeed in doing that. He started off by importing records, but then he decided he was actually going to produce some over here. And as he was still going by one modest way of business, as he was being his own salesman, he walked into the shop that I was managing and tried to sell me something I think called Live with Love or something like that. 3 volumes of sex education, which was pretty daring stuff for that time. We didn't talk about it, let alone put it on record. By anonymously done or pseudonymously done by some psychiatrist or other. I don't think they sold too well. He followed that with an EP about how to give up smoking, and that came at the wrong time. In the 60s, nobody was interested in giving up smoking. Well, not really. I mean, they talked about it, they never did it. Then he got the idea of going into recording, and he saw that folk music was something that was coming up, and it was only being dealt with by these companies like Topic, who had sort of artistic integrity and stuff like that. And he could see weaknesses in that philosophy. And he decided that there was something to be done here, and he was right, of course there was. So he did what everybody did at that time. He made a record of Cy Grant. Now, what did we do next? We got quite ambitious. Oh, one of the things we did in that was songs of Sidney Carter. Now, Sidney Carter is best known for having written Lord of the Dance, but he's written hundreds and hundreds of other songs. He's a Quaker with a conscience and an ability to write good lyrics. And we did a recording of Sidney Carter songs. And the female songs were sung by Sheila Hancock.
Tobacco, tobacco, I hate you, I do. Like Venus I'd look if it wasn't for you. But I'll give up the habit, I will even yet, when I've had just one more cigarette. It wasn't the whiskey, it wasn't the wine that made such a wreck of this body of mine. I'll give up the habit, I will even yet, when I've had just one more cigarette. Under my eyes are a couple of bags. I blame it all onto a packet of fags. But I'll give up the habit, I will even yet, when I've had just one more cigarette. My teeth are all yellow and so is my tongue. I breathe through a kipper, I call it a lung. But I'll give up the habit, I will even yet, when I've had just one more cigarette.
I'm Archie Fisher, and you're listening to Leaders' Tapes here on Radio 2. In the early 60s, during the blossoming of the fringe of the Edinburgh Festival, the Scottish capital became a mecca for the first wave of the professional folk singer. It was a boom town with clubs, pubs, church halls, and even empty shops offering a wide range of folk music. I was there, as was my younger sister Ray, along with the Ian Campbell folk group, and so were the representatives of the Hungry recording companies.
My Johnny is a shoemaker, and he has gone to sea. My Johnny is a shoemaker, and he has gone to sea. To reef the topsails he has gone, far across the raging sea. His jacket was a deep sea blue, and golden was his hair. His jacket was a deep sea blue, and golden was his hair. That I know and I do declare, my Johnny is a shoemaker. A captain he'll be by and by, with a brave and a gallant crew. A captain he'll be by and by, with a sword and a musket too. That I know and I do declare, my Johnny is a shoemaker. My Johnny is a shoemaker, and he has gone to sea. My Johnny is a shoemaker, and he has gone to sea. To reef the topsails he has gone, far across the raging sea.
Edinburgh seemed to be the folk magnet at that time of year. People just descended on it, the fringe activity. A lot of folk people turned up there. The Incredibles were there, I remember. There was Alex Campbell used to be around. There was Owen Hand. Nadia Catus was doing a show. Carthy was up. There was some sort of jungle telegraph went out that there were some recordings wanting to be done. They were going to make some record of the folk activities during the festival. And some big mogul called Nat Joseph from Transatlantic was going to be there.
Well, if Ray was impressed by Transatlantic, what did Ian Campbell think?
Transatlantic was a new label, and Nat Joseph approached us and said, at a time when we were being approached, I mean, we had suddenly become a presence on the music scene. We'd just done a big breakthrough of folk at the Edinburgh Festival when Princess Margaret came to hear us and all sorts. Suddenly we were inundated by offers from major labels who wanted to put us under contract. And Nat Joseph had been using Bill as his recording engineer. And he got in touch with us, and he said, well, if you sign with EMI or HMV or one of those, he said, you'll be number 38 on page 7 of their catalogue. But we're a brand new label, and you'll be number 1 on page 1. In fact, you'll be the only artist we've got. So if you sign with us, we have to sell you, to promote you in order to survive. And we talked that over with Bill, and he said, well, yeah, that seems like a reasonable argument. I can't see any reason why you shouldn't sign with them. I think Twilight Recruiting Sergeants is the one that I enjoyed most, because it was something totally Aberdeen, and it was the sort of song that people in England had not heard before. It was new to the English repertoire.
Recruiting sergeants come play the Black Watch. They markets and fairs, some recruits for to catch. And all that they listed was 40 and twa. So list bonny laddie and come awa. For it's over the mountain and over the main, through Gibraltar to France and Spain. Get a feather to your bonnet and the kilt in your knee, and list bonny laddie and come awa with me. Oh laddie, you dinna ken the danger that you're in. If your horses was the plague and your housing was the rent, this greedy old fair man wanna pay your fee. So list bonny laddie and come awa with me. For it's over the mountain and over the main, through Gibraltar to France and Spain. Get a feather to your bonnet and the kilt in your knee, and list bonny laddie and come awa with me. For it's in by the barn and out by the bear, this old fair mare thinks she'll never tire. For it's a slavery job of low degree. So list bonny laddie and come awa with me. For it's over the mountain and over the main, through Gibraltar to France and Spain. Get a feather to your bonnet and the kilt in your knee, and list bonny laddie and come awa with me.
The resonant sound of the Ian Campbell folk group, linking up their Birmingham-based popularity to Scotland's northeast with Junior Robertson's Twa Recruiting Sergeants. During the beginnings of the folk boom, Bill Leader continued to tap into the rich vein of Irish music being played in the London pubs.
There's some records which I'm really very proud of, I think, like Paddy and the Smoke, where we went week after week after week to one particular pub. The favourite, it was just off the Holloway Road, and we just set up a microphone and just recorded, went on, and then edited up an album out of it. And I think it was good music, good playing, and also quite honestly representative of the top end of what was going on in music making at that time in that particular place. I was doing the technical side of all this, but the person that was really setting it up, was liaising with the Irish community, was Reg Hall.
We had a regular booking, Jimmy Power and I had a regular booking every Sunday lunchtime in a pub, The Favourites in North London. And it was a session where we played instrumental music, nothing else. Very rarely was there a song. And in turn, almost every active musician, Irish musician in London would come in and would be asked to play a tune. So that on a standard Sunday, Jimmy would play the first half hour, there would be 2 or 3 regulars who would get up and play, and then the strangers came in. And on a good day there might have been 8 musicians playing, in usually solo, mostly fiddle and flute, but over sort of we played together for 20 years on and off in The Favourite. But I mean, there must have been hundreds of musicians came in.
Jimmy Power leading off the Dr. O'Neill set from the Bill Leader Paddy in the Smoke album on Topic. But it wasn't all happening in London. The home visits of the Clancy brothers and Tommy Makem had revitalised the scene in Era. Here were a set of role models that had not only made it in America, they were being welcomed home like prodigal sons. Ronnie Drew of the then brand new Dubliners took the cue.
It was called the Dubliners with Luke Kelly, because the group had been formed about a year, maybe 2 years. Now that was the first one we had, and there's a great photograph on the front of it. We had like pieces of string holding up the instruments and all, and that wasn't done consciously. That's what we were holding up the instruments with. Bill Leader was the man to put it out, and he was the first man to give us a chance really to do something. And in those days, of course, the whole recording technique was different than now. You know, you couldn't be dropping in things and dropping out things, and you know, we all had to stand around, I think, about 2 microphones and get it all down. It's amazing how it came out, you know what I mean? I think Bill did 3 or 4 with us, 3 or 4 records.
Well, in the merry month of May, now from me home I started, left the girls and 2 and nearly broken hearted, saluted father dear, kissed me darling mother, drank a pint of beer, me grief and tears to smothered enough to reap the corn and leaf, for I was born, got a stout flax on the banished ghost and goblins, a brand new pair of brogues to rattle over the bogs and frighten all the dogs on the rocky road. It's a double of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt a hare and turn her down the rocky road, and all the ways to double and make for all the da. In Mullingar that night I rested limbs so weary, started by daylight next morning light, and there he took a drop of the pure to keep me heart and drink, and that's the Paddy's cure. When there he's up for drinking, they hear the lassie smile, laughing all the while at me curious style to touch a heart above, and he asked me was I hired and wages I required till I was almost tired of the rocky road. To double and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt a hare and turn her down the rocky road, and all the way to double and make for da. In double and next arrived, I thought it such a pity to be so soon deprived the view of that fine city. Then I took a stroll all among the quality bundle, it was stowel in a neat locality. Something crossed me mind when I looked behind, no bundle could I find upon me stick, go wobbling and firing after the rogue, said me cunning brogue, it wasn't much in vogue on the rocky road. To double and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt a hare and turn her down the rocky road, and all the ways to double and make for da. From there I got away, me spirits never failing, landed on the quay just as the ship was sailing. Captain at me road said that old room Hardy, when I jumped aboard the cabin found for Paddy down among the pigs, did some hearty rigs, I played some hearty jigs, the water round me bubbling when I fully had, I wished myself was dead or better far instead on the rocky road. To double and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt a hare and turn her down the rocky road, and all the ways to double and make for da. The boys of Liverpool, when we safely landed, called myself the fool, I could no longer stand it, blood began to boil, temper I was Lewis and poor old Aaron's Isle, they began abusing her me, so says I'm Shillelagh, I looked by, Galway boys were by, and so I was a hobbling with the lower hooray, the joy and in the affray, quickly clear the way for the rocky road. To double and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt a hare and turn her down the rocky road, and all the ways to double and make for da.
The rocky road to Dublin, which was to lead to smoother paths for the Dubliners and Luke Kelly. Next Wednesday on Leaders' Tapes, we'll hear how the raw recording talents of now legendary characters like Bert Jansch, Billy Connolly, Jerry Rafferty and Ali Bain were refined by sound engineer Bill Leader. Meanwhile, in the London musical melting pot, a new breed had emerged, the guitar gurus. They had an anthem in David Graham's Angie.
There was Alexis Corner who said, we should get Davies' Angie on record, because Davies Graham's Angie was on everybody's fingertips at that time. There wasn't a guitarist, in this country anyway, that didn't go around playing it at any moment when he wasn't actually involved in doing anything else. I can remember going up to Glasgow. I think I was going to do some recordings for one of these Holy Lock Anti-Polaris things. Somebody was going to make a film and I was going to do some background recording for it. And I remember going into, I forget which particular square it was, where the demonstration was going to form up and going to process somewhere or other. And the square was full of earnest people with banners and things like that, and young kids with guitars. And everyone, this is no joke, this is absolute truth, every one of about 50 kids, as you pass them, as you walk round the square, were playing Angie.
Good evening, I'm Archie Fisher, welcoming you to Reel 3 in the series Leaders' Tapes. By the mid-60s, Bill Leader's work with Topic and subsequently Transatlantic Records had made a start in covering the wide range of music that sheltered under the umbrella title of the folk revival. A whole clutch of artists who were eventually to gain international renown were soon to come knocking on the door of the London flat, where Bill, and later Bill and Helen, would offer them hospitality and a helping hand on the first step towards what could be recording immortality.
The Bert Jansch record was recorded in the back room at 5 North Villas, the room that had the Magic Acoustic. And that sat on the bed, because it was also the bedroom in the studio. We only had 2 rooms. The studio was the bedroom. And he just sang the songs. I did it mainly because, I mean, there was a big swell of opinion about importance of Bert and what he was doing. But it was Anne Briggs really who sort of took me firmly by the throat and said, look, you must do this record. It was on spec. Anyway, Nat was reluctant to take it, but he did. His reluctance, I think, was reflected in the out-and-out once and for all payment that he made for it, which was fairly modest amount. But musically, of course, it's wonderful stuff.
Strolling down the highway, I'm gonna get there my way. Just till dawn I'm walking, can you hear my guitar riding? Watch stroll on down the highway. People think I'm a crazy, but Lord above ain't lazy. The sun shines all day long, the garlic's far too strong. While I stroll on down the highway.
At that point I didn't have a guitar, so I was always borrowing one, and so every time I appeared at his flat I had a different guitar, and it was usually just, stand in front of this mic and away you go, son, play whatever you like, it's but I'd no idea that me and just a guitar was going to be of interest. I just wanted to play it and got on with it and go on to do the next thing, whatever it was. The one thing about the very early stuff with me is I hated my voice, and always have done. So therefore the early stuff I will not listen to at all, because I just sound so young, and that it's unbelievable, and so I don't really have that many favourites. I mean, the favourites started appearing when Bill used to come down to our house in Sussex, East Sussex. Ticehurst. He used to come down once a week, just when the Pentagon was going on, and record a track or two. Sometimes we wouldn't, we'd be in a pub, so that was about a year went on like that, and we got Rosemary Lane, the album out of it, and some of the tracks on there I really like,
Bill Leader's far-flung travels as an itinerant recording engineer had brought him into contact with a wide range of folk music, Many of the now legendary source singers and musicians were still alive at the time and sharing the same club, concert and festival stages as the new revival stars. Thankfully, Bill realised that the integrity of the tradition had to be maintained not only as a record of the regional and national cultures, but for the performance itself. So that now, when you listen to the voice of Joe Heaney, the years just roll away.
Come on, wherever and time to be. Don't hire with any master till you know what your work will be. For you must rise up early from the clear daylight till the dawn. I'm afraid you'll never be able to plough the rocks of all. And rise up, gallant Sweeney, and give your heart some hay, and give him a good feed oat before you go away. Don't feed him all soft turnip, put him out on your green lawn, or I'm afraid he'll ne'er be able to plough the rocks of all.
The high Irish ballad style of Joe Heaney lamenting the rocks of Bawn from Bill Leader's definitive recording. There's no doubt that Bill's openness of ear served him well both as a sound engineer and as a spotter of talent. All he needed, as with many things in this life, was to be in the right place at the right time.
I remember being in Glasgow one time, and I can't remember exactly why. I was in a bar, and this fellow went in to a devastatingly amusing anecdote about something that only just happened to him because we walked across the street towards the bar, which he told with enormous aplomb. At the same time, his arms and legs were moving around as if somebody else was working the strings, and it was just a fantastic, overpowering performance of somebody who casually walked into a bar up to a group of people. He obviously knew them. He wasn't inflicting himself on them, and he was obviously very welcome amongst them. But to me, I thought, who is this? And because it was Billy Connolly, and he was working with this fellow called Tam Harvey, as the Humble Bums. Strange name. But anyway, they were making their mark in Scotland, and we did some albums in London, and I did my most expensive track there. It was strange. So Goodbye, it was called. Goodbye. Billy Connolly had fallen in love with this idea, this old Boer War song about goodbye, E, don't cry, E. Wipe a tear, baby dear, from your eye, E. And he'd also got this idea of prefixing a performance of this song by the Humble Bum with the playing of the Ramsbottom Brass Band. He's a man who gets brilliant ideas in this way, Billy.
Goodbye, goodbye, wipe the tear, baby dear, from your eye. Though it's hard to part, I know I'll be tickled to death to go. Goodbye, don't cry, there's a silver lining in the sky. Bonsoir, old thing, cheerio, ching ching, napu, toodaloo, goodbye.
the antithesis of Billy Connolly, where Billy was the all talking, all singing, all screaming, all moving person. Jerry Rafferty hardly moved at all. He seldom spoke, certainly not unless he's spoken to. But a tremendously powerful performer in a completely different way from Billy. And as I was later to find when I worked with him, when Humblebums became Jerry Rafferty and Billy Connolly, one of the most intelligent studio workers that I've ever come across. Jerry, who was into multi-tracking voices and things like that, had it all in his head, not just the sound, but the actual technique, the requirement, the actual technical requirement, what he needed to do in order to put it all. He was one of the most effective workers in the studio in terms of using the studio as a musical instrument, as well as, of course, a wonderful songwriter too.
Walk in, sit down, open up your case, tune up and turn round, show your face to the crowd. Sing a song in genuine bluegrass voice about your Dixie darling, the banjo that's always in tune. Please sing a song for us, play your guitar. There isn't one of us care who you are, but if the sound is good, you won't go wrong. Please sing a song for us and we will sing along. So long. Stand up and stretch out to take the hand of a girl called Rosie. We thought your performance was cool. Tune in, turn on, stop dead in your tracks at the voice softly singing about some fool on a hill. Please sing a song for us, play your guitar. There isn't one of us care who you are, and if the sound is good, you won't go wrong. Please sing a song for us and we will sing along. So long.
I'm Archie Fisher, and you're listening to Leaders' Tapes on Radio 2. Around the same time that Jerry and Billy were on the road, other extraordinary happenings were calling on Bill Leader's audio engineering skills. Mr. Fox, one of the first folk rock bands, fused together, and at the other extreme, an unaccompanied trio called the Young Tradition were rapidly gaining cult status. Heather Wood is the group's sole survivor.
He knew what we needed, and he knew what the people he recorded needed, and he sort of made it comfortable for them to record, for people who'd maybe, as we hadn't, and we were singing around the clubs, we hadn't seen a microphone, we didn't know how different it was going to be. And I think that's what he did with the traditional singers as well, that he made it comfortable for them to record. And the one thing about Bill Leader, I don't think he ever made a negative comment at all. It was always very positive. Bill made it all accessible. Compared with some of the traditional singers that he recorded, we were, sophisticated and savvy, despite knowing very little.
I'll have the drums a-beating, and I must taste away. The bugles sweetly sound, and I can no longer stay.
We are called up to Portsmouth, and it's many a weary mile to fight the blacks and heathens on the banks of the Nile. Oh, Willie, dearest Willie, don't leave me here to mourn. Don't make me curse and rue the day that ever I was born. For parting from you, Willie, is like parting from me life. Oh, stay at home, dear William, and I will be thee wife. Oh, I'll cut off me yellow hair and go along with you. I'll dress myself in velveteen and go and see Egypt too. I'll fight and hold the banner, love and fortune it may smile, and we'll gather love and honor on the banks of the Nile. Your waist it is too slender, your features are too fine, your body is too weak, my love, to stand a long campaign. The sultry suns of Egypt your precious health may spoil, and the sandy desert places on the banks of the Nile. Oh, cursed, cursed be the day that here the wars began, for they've taken out of England full many a fine young man. Our lads have gone to perish on that unwholesome soil, and they never will return from the banks of the Nile.
Banks of the Nile from the first real superstars of the a cappella, the Young Tradition. Bill and Helen Leader had been for some time nurturing the ambition to form their own recording company. One of the last projects that Bill worked on for Topic involved a Lancashire compilation of artists, one of whom was Mike Harding.
Harry Boardman, who was the stalwart of the Manchester folk scene years and years ago, sadly no longer with us, wanted to make a compilation album which he called Deep Lancashire. And there's me, Bernard Ridley, the Oldham Tinkers, Harry himself, and various other people like Harry Ogden, Dave Brooks, the sort of nexus, if you like, of Manchester and Lancashire folk singers, put together this album for Topic. And Bill came up to record it in the old Manchester College of Science and Technology theatre. And I remember seeing him walk round the room clapping. And I thought, what's he doing? You know, just on his own. He ignored everybody else. And of course he was looking for an acoustically dead spot. And he found it right in the middle. And we stood in the stalls, not on the stage, but actually in the stalls where he found this acoustically dead spot, with the Reeboks balanced on two cases, and performed there and did our bits. That was the first time I met him. Then we made another album after that, was called Oldham Edge. Again for Topic, and again a compilation of Lancashire people. They did very well, yeah, and largely due, obviously, to Bill's ear, because he's got what I think the best pair of ears for folk music that ever has been in the business.
Hail Spinnick, hail Spinnick, hail Spinnick for me. Hail Spinnick, hail Spinnick, hail Spinnick for me.
I was going by a doctor's house at top of Newton Mead, and there I did a sudden stop and gan me fear to death. My arm shook like an aspen leaf, I did it in my shoon. It seemed as dark as 12 at night, though it were but 12 at noon.
Hail Spinnick, hail Spinnick, hail Spinnick for me. Hail Spinnick, hail Spinnick, hail Spinnick for me.
I thought I see the gallery where yon crop thief were wrong. I'm not out, Nick, were taking me and Harry done me young. I grew up me way to doctor's door, and there I tumble it down. For it gun me such a sauce, it well, it broke me crown.
Hail Spinnick, hail Spinnick, hail Spinnick for me.
There came a time when it struck me that the whole folk scene was developing very fast, and of course it was getting more complex as it went along. And there was a whole area of stuff to be recorded and released, and that we thought there would be some sort of market for. that neither Transatlantic would handle, because it really didn't have their sort of gloss on it, or topic. It didn't really fit into what they were trying to do. And I've been doing freelance production for Transatlantic and Topic for 2-3 years, and I thought, well, because you're freelance, dashing around trying to think up ideas and stuff like that, you get a lot of ideas that nobody wants to buy. And I thought, well, I'd buy it, and it seemed to make some sort of sense to start a label to get some of this stuff made available on the market. So we started. Then we had to find a name. We thought, well, we'll call a traditional one. We thought Leader would be a good name, because it's a sort of a play on words, you know. It's the name of the person who's doing a lot of the work. And of course, there is technically every tape and every film has a leader at the front of it, which is the bit that you put through that you never play, but enables the rest of it to go through and be played. And also, to carry on the play on words, we call the revival label a trailer, because that's the piece of stuff that never gets played that goes on the end of the reel of tape and follows on the stuff that went before, which indeed was what the revival was there to do. And then we had more play on words. When we eventually started a publishing company, we called it Leading Note, which I thought was extremely amusing at the time. So we set off. And we had 2 records, one on each. In fact, there was one leader, which was Jack Elliott of Berkeley. It was a, I suppose in a way, a sort of celebration not only of Jack Elliott, who was a great character, and the Elliott family that came from Berkeley, a mining village in County Durham, but also a celebration of that whole type mining community culture, because it's one of the few industrial activities that happen in villages. And the other record that we did was a trailer record, and that was of Archie Fisher. It was Barbara Dixon's, I think, very first recording to be released. And great performance. I mean, Barbara is just she's so intense a performer when you've got there's nobody there but her and the microphone, and she's putting everything into interpreting that song. She's a wonderful performer.
My love was born in Aberdeen, a funniest lad I'd ever seen. But knew he made sure heads good sad. He's taken a field with his white cockade. Oh, he's a ranting, a roving blade. He's a brisk and a bonny lad. Betide what may, my heart is glad to see my lad with his white cockade. So leave me on a pillow bag, the hairy hawk and the doctored leg. But I the thing that blinds my eyes, the white cockade up in the breeze. Oh, he's a ranting, a roving blade. He's a brisk and a bonny lad. Betide what may, my heart is glad to see my lad with his white cockade. I'll sell my Rockley and tow my good grey mare and hawk cow. But every loyal bucking lad may take a field in a white cockade. Oh, he's a ranting, a roving blade. He's a brisk and a bonny lad. Betide what may, my heart is glad to see my lad with his white cockade.
Barbara Dixon with the Jacobite song The White Cockade from the first trailer release, The Fate of Charlie. The sister Leader label, launched simultaneously, produced many fine recordings of source singers in what became known as the 4000 series. A highlight of these volumes was the album of Percy Granger's cylinder recordings of Joseph Taylor.
It was on the 5th of August, the weather hot and fair, unto Brig Fair I did repair, for love I was inclined. I got up with the lark in the morning, with me heart so full of glee, expecting dear to meet my dear, long time I'd wish to see.
Dark the night and long till day, do not bid us further
the singer's request from the definitive revival singer Nick Jones. Next week, in the last edition of Leaders' Tapes, we'll hear how Bill took his recording know-how and his 2 new labels back to the north of England, and also set another chain reaction going with Christy Moore and Planksty. Probably the most northerly talent that ever came through the Leader recording process was the Shetland fiddler, Ali Bain.
I would just say that without guys like Bill, many things wouldn't have happened. And people like Bill make things happen, and at the time you always think they're mad, or you always think they're doing something really crazy, but I think guys like Bill have a vision about more than we had. I was just playing the fiddle for fun. He took this whole thing seriously, and so if he gets credit, it's that he was a pioneer, really, and he was out there doing things seriously when, in a way, the people he was working with were immature young guys just on the road, and he recognised that this would become something, and long before we did.
Good evening, I'm Archie Fisher, bringing you the 4th and final reel in the Leaders' Tape series. It seems to be part of human nature to take for granted the work of previous generations. During Bill Leader's involvement as a producer and recording engineer in the developing years of the British and Irish folk revival, he laid down an extensive catalogue of archive and definitive new material. So it's worth remembering that the recordings we now treat as an easily accessible resource were once at the cutting edge of a technical and musical frontier. And at that time for Bill, in the folk album market, a hit record was a relative term.
There's always been, at least in the period when I was functioning effectively in this area, there was always a ceiling of the number of people that you could really afford to, who were out there prepared to buy the record. Fortunately, if you've only got, say, 1,000 people who are going to buy your record, you don't have a tremendous marketing problem, because you do know that those 1,000 people are actually looking for your record as hard as you're looking for them. So you don't have to waste money on big publicity campaigns and stuff like that. You just somehow got to make it known that it's out, and they will eventually find you. So there's an economy in that way. So you can survive on a small market. It's not even suffer from the illusion that if you could only sell 10,000 of these records, you could retire for the rest of your life or something like that. But for 10,000 people, there weren't 10,000 people out there prepared to buy them very often. There was the occasional one. First one we had, I think, was Robin and Barry Dransfield. It was just the right record at the right time. It did eventually, not instantly by any means, sell about 10,000 or so, which at that time was a hot seller.
All the trees they do grow high, and the leaves they do grow green, and many's the long and winter's night my love and I have seen. It's a cold winter's night, my love, you and I must lie alone. My bonny boy is young, but he's growing. Oh, Father, dear Father, you've done to me right wrong, to go and get me married to one who is too young. For he's only 16 years and I am 21. My bonny boy is young, but he's growing.
Mike Lal Waterson was staying at this two-room flat that we had that was office, living space and studio, and also DOS house for the entire boat. Just sling another hammock, some more people are coming to town. And anyway, they were sitting around. Norma was in the West Indies and was expected back, I think, fairly soon. And they'd written some songs and they sang them into a tape machine. But it was fairly casual sort of performance. And out of that grew the idea of the Bright Phoebus recording, which eventually pulled together a whole lot of fantastic performers who joined in the enterprise. It never commercially got the recognition it should have done, because I think that there's some just wonderful, wonderful tracks. Well, I think every track is a wonderful track on that record.
I started writing songs quite out the blue. Lal and George came back to Hull and bought a house, and I popped down to see him, and Lal says, "What do you think of this?" "Well, I've been in Leeds, I've been writing these songs." And she played one and sang it, and it was absolutely wonderful. And I said, "What do you think of this?" You know, and we suddenly found that we were writing songs independently. So I worked quite close to where Lal lived, so every dinner time I popped round, had my dinner at Lal's, and we were bouncing off each other ideas all the time, and it was wonderful. And in the end, I could walk in on a dinner time and we'd write a song that dinner time, both putting an input into it. Out of it came Bright Phoebus. I think it's magnificent. I have a weakness for Lal's poetry and tunes and that. Some of it, like I cannot for the life of me understand why Rubber Band was never taken up by anybody and you know, made big, because Rubber Band is, to me, magnificent. As a writer, it's a joke.
I'm the leader of the Rubber Band. It's the finest band in the land, and isn't it grand? Been the only band in the land to play Rubber Band. Just like margarine or famous Spanish, I'm not right to start off on this slow.
because it's one of my favourite little bits and pieces, and he saved it from annihilation, etc., would be Billy Pig. I've got that tape in my workshop, and if I don't put it, if I'm working in the workshop, if it doesn't go on at least once while I'm in there, you know, there's something wrong. I'm not feeling good, you know.
The Border minstrel and doyen of Northumbrian piping, Billy Pig. Thanks to his leader recording, this wizard of the small pipes was finding a new audience through an unlikely media patron, the highly eclectic John Peel, as Radio 1 presenter John Kavanagh recalls.
I was very lucky in that I listened to certain radio programs from Radio 1 called Sounds of the 70s at a time when the music they were playing was so eclectic. There was, of course, John Peel with Top Gear twice a week, and then Bob Harris and Pete Drummond, etc., etc. And they would be playing stuff which fell into the category of progressive music. You would hear Frank Zappa, and you would hear Black Sabbath and Deep Purple and all those things. But also, mixed in with all that, you would hear the Dransfields, or Nick Jones, or the Johnsons, Mr. Fox. We knew that John Peel wrote the sleeve notes for the Pentangle first album, and there was Pete and Chris Coe and the Boys of the Loch and the Watersons. And I think at that stage, my party piece as a young child was something I'd heard on a Peel session, in fact, by Swan Arcade.
Up and down the gods a pacing, no one can get through. Flight would mean a sure death facing, guns and barbed wire greet our view. We are the Peterborough soldiers, we're marching with our spades to the moor. But for us there is no complaining. Winter will in time be past. Then once more we will stand rejoicing. Homeland dear, you are mine at last. Then will the Peterborough soldiers march no more with their spades to the moor.
The Yorkshire trio Swan Arcade, who must be the only band that ever auditioned for a recording deal over the telephone. The Leader trailer label, along with Bill and Helen, was now located in the north, sandwiched between Huddersfield and Halifax in the village of Greetland. The move had been an initial success, but new logistical problems were waiting just over the Yorkshire hills.
There was an instant shortage of oil from the Middle East. It didn't even have time to feed through, folks. There was a next day instant shortage of PVC from which records are made. It was alarming. It was disappeared faster than the 10-inch LP, the PVC, when the oil problems came. And there was a period of great difficulty of actually getting any records pressed. But we got out of it because we were Transatlantic, who we'd worked very closely with. They came to a whole new deal whereby they pressed and marketed and actually sort of took Leader and Taylor on as part of their stable of labels.
Following the move to the north, Bill and Helen found a new musical community of friends and supporters. The Leader label was standing firmly in the grassroots, but still had an eye for the far horizons. One of the new Leader Trailer group was fiddler, collector and sleeve designer Janet Kerr.
It was like a family, really, and we all ate together and drank together. Oh, it was really exciting. Being involved in what felt like the centre of the universe, because the folk scene was so important to me, and this is where everybody came and dropped in and had a cup of tea on the way through. It's a wonderful job designing album sleeves because they're really good size, not too big and they're not too small, and I enjoyed the sort of team spirit of working with people and trying to get exactly what they wanted.
Takes Isley from one of Janet Kerr's compilations on Leader. On this side of the Atlantic, the label was also building a strong Masters of Irish Music series with fiddler Martin Burns, the music from the Coleman Country album, and the piping of Seamus Innes. But the crossover to a groundbreaking release of new Irish music came with Christy Moore and Company on their landmark trailer recording called Prosperous.
There were three old gypsies came to our hall door. They came brave and boldly, yo, and this one sang high and the other sang low, and the lady sang the raggle-taggle gypsy, yo. It was upstairs, downstairs the lady went, put on her suit of leather, oh, and that was the cry all around our door. She's away with the raggle-taggle gypsy, yo. It was late that night, oh, the Lord came in, inquiring for his lady, yo, and the servant girls replied to him, oh, she's away with the raggle-taggle gypsy, yo. Oh, then saddle for me milk white steed, me big horse is not speedy, yo, and I will ride, and I'll seek me bride, she's away with the raggle-taggle gypsy, yo. Oh, then he rode east and he rode west, he rode north and south also, but when he rode to the wide open field, it was there that he spied to his lady, yo. Why do you leave your house and your land? Why do you leave your money, yo? Why do you leave your only wedded lord, all for the raggle-taggle gypsy, yo? Yerra, what do I care for me house and me land? What do I care for money, yo? Yerra, what do I care for me only wedded lord? I'm away with the raggle-taggle gypsy, yo. It was there last night, you'd a goose feather bed with blankets drawn so comely, yo, but tonight you lie in the wide open field in the arms of the raggle-taggle gypsy, yo. Yerra, what do I care for me goose feather bed? Yerra, what do I care for blankets? Oh, yerra, what do I care for me only wedded lord? I'm away with the raggle-taggle gypsy, yo. Oh, for you rode east when I rode west, you rode high when I rode low. I'd rather have a kiss at the yellow gypsy's lips than a lot of cash in his money, yo.
There's no doubt about it, something happened at the time. Maybe it was just a sort of combination of people, but definitely an awareness sprang out of that, which became Planksty and became what Planksty did as well. It was, if you like, the possibilities that exist in deceptively simple traditional songs and tunes.
Donal Lunny from the Prosperous Sessions.
Whatever happened, one of the things I will never forget as long as I live is standing beside Bill's Revox with a pair of headphones on, listening back to one of those recordings that he made in the basement of this ancient Georgian house in Prosperous. The quality and how well he captured it was really remarkable. I think he's a very subtle producer.
I'm Archie Fisher, and you're listening to Leaders' Tapes on Radio 2.
We worked on this new relationship with Transatlantic quite happily for several years. And then Transatlantic was bought by Granada, and that sort of, we thought, might throw up in the air that relationship. Then Granada sold it on to Logo. And eventually that did throw up in the air. Logo Records, I think, were not particularly interested in the sort of folk music that we were doing. And they indicated that when the agreement came to an end, they didn't wish to renew it. So that threw us on our own a bit, or entirely, put it another way. The folk thing was going through a bit of a dip at the time, and incidentally so was the use of 8-track studios, which was our other means of income. When it seemed to us that we weren't going to be able to do very much more with the recording projects. I think we'd, at that time, run fairly dry of recording projects. That we didn't have the machinery, I mean the distribution machinery and so on, the manufacturing machinery to do it. And the market at that point seemed to be shrinking. We sold the label. We asked around to see if anybody was prepared to come up with anything like a reasonable offer for it. And I gather since then it's I don't know really, because I mean obviously I sold all the rights and everything like that, so I've no right to know or anything about what's happened, but it seems that it's been sold on and on and on.
The unidentical twin leader and trailer labels had built up an impressive catalogue at the time of their demise. The range and quality of material still impresses one of Bill's early protégés, Mike Harding.
I think the whole catalogue should be reissued on CD, I really do. I'm not talking about mine, because mine was a comedy album, and comedy albums don't. They've got a bad shelf life, they don't keep forever, unless you're Lenny Bruce, you know, a genius, a comic genius. There's a Dransfield's Route of the Blues, and Berlin's Dalesman's Litany was a fantastic album. I think that they should all be reissued.
Here's the tender coming, pressing all the men. Oh dear Hinny, what shall we do then? Here's the tender coming off at Shields Bar. Here's the tender coming full of men of war. And here's the tender coming, pressing of me dear. Oh dear Hinny, take you away from here. They will ship you foreign, that is what it means. Here's the tender coming full of red marines. And here's the tender coming, pressing all the men. Oh dear Hinny, what shall we do then? Here's the tender coming off at Shields Bar. Here's the tender coming full of men of war.
The ever laid-back style of Dave Berlin from his trailer release at Dalesman's Litany. Albums are nothing more than musical time capsules. The performers may move on, but recordings have a habit of staying around for a while. Most drift off eventually into total obscurity. But Dave Bulmer of Celtic Music sees the Bill Leader era as highly recyclable, especially in terms of our heritage.
Well, I mean, it was a work of labour and love by Bill, which I think an awful lot of what Bill did was. I mean, there was two sides to what he did. And I think the way that I see it is that it's our job to reissue the catalogue, and I think you intersperse the good commercial releases with the stuff that isn't so commercial. And I think there probably is a market for it now, funnily enough, because I think places like libraries, etc., which didn't particularly stock it then, are more interested in those areas now. I think the growth of world music, for instance, has created an interest in, you know, history, and that's what those albums were all about. But yeah, the plan would be, I mean, I wouldn't say we'd issue every single album, because there was a couple of things later on that where we've no idea where the musicians are, either singer-songwriters or whatever, who may have stopped playing or whatever, so there's no way we'd probably cover our costs on them. But I think the general majority of the catalogue, yeah, we'll reissue.
Back in the old days, when folk singers like myself were learning their trade, we were fortunate to still have contact with the last true generation of traditional singers and musicians. But since the 60s, the folk revival has been bombarded from all quarters by fusions and confusions of other outside influences. So does the current younger generation find its folk roots in what has been described as a revival of the revival? Radio 2 folk anchorman Jim Lloyd.
I think a lot of the young singers now, the 20-year-olds, were really just about being born by the time that bill leaders' labels were doing really well. And of course their parents had them. And a lot of these younger people, I'm thinking about people like Catherine Roberts and Kate Rusby, were brought up listening to the sort of music that Bill Leader was recording, and that's their source of music. They don't go right back to the English Folk Dancers Song Society archives and things like that. Their source of music was the music which was being played 20, 25 years ago. And of course so much of that was Bill's music, so he's still very influential on what's going on the folk revival today.
What's the matter with you, my lads? And where's your dashing Jimmy? Them soldier boys have picked him up and taken them far from me. Last payday he went into town and them recruiters enticed him in and made him drunk, and he'd better come to the gallows.
The proverb that says, beware of what you long for in your youth, because in your later years you shall surely have it, worked well for Bill Leader. He had been a part of a far-reaching cultural and technical era that still resonates throughout the whole history of popular music. If he had decided instead to be an engine driver, he'd probably still be somewhere on the footplate of a steam locomotive. But what do recording engineers become when they grow up?
There was a possibility of a job going at Salford College of Technology, where they decided that they were going to run courses and instruction in sound recording and other things. I mean, pretty comprehensive courses. And I managed to get a job there. And so the last 12 years or so of my sort of pre-retirement, pre-65 years, I was doing the lecture bit, passing on what I knew to others.
I'm Archie Fisher, and it's been my pleasure to present the Leaders' Tapes series. Our reporters were Danny Kyle and John Leonard, and the series was compiled and produced by Robert Noakes for Neon Productions.